Hello.
Good evening, teacher. Good evening, Andres.
How are you?
Fine.
Good evening, everybody. Is the sound okay?
Good evening, teacher. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
Well,
Good. Well, to start, I would like to know if you have questions about the reading that you had last week, which was about data collection instruments.
It was clear, but it was long.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
Um, let's could you guys mention some of the instruments used to collect data?
Field notes.
Mhm.
Journals. Diagrams. I'm thinking of the observational. Diagrams, videos, audios,
Intimate journals,
photographs.
Yes.
interviews.
I don't know if I'm missing one. And in these interviews, structured, unstructured, and semi-structured.
Right.
Um,
What's the difference between those three types of interviews?
Structured is that you have the questions beforehand, and you basically do the same interview to everybody. Semi-structured is that you have kind of an idea, maybe some questions prepared, or at least an idea, some guidelines. But you also add other questions as the interview goes on. And unstructured is just like a free conversation in which you just like a free conversation.
Exactly. That's the difference. Good, Andres. Okay, which other instrument can we use to collect data?
Let's see, start interviews. I can't remember.
Good evening.
Recordings.
Note taking. Do you have that one already?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the ones of the non-observational. Documents.
Uh-huh. So for
Life
example,
stories.
if we have workshops, those would be documents or artifacts.
Also planners, class planners.
Planning, all those types of things. Life stories. Yes, it was called like that, like biographies, life stories.
Yes.
Those are also the non-observational. I don't know. Are we missing someone?
Surveys.
Yes, surveys or
Yeah, surveys and questionnaires.
questionnaires. Yes.
And questionnaires. So questionnaires, we can also have open questionnaires
Yeah.
or semi-structured questionnaires.
Yeah, and it talked about scaled and things like that.
We're missing classroom discussions as well.
Okay. Do you guys have questions about any of those data collection instruments?
I thought it was kind of clear.
No, Nate. No.
So the idea tonight is to check one method to analyze data. Because this week, what you have to do is to work in pairs to analyze some transcripts of a research that was carried out in the program 2 years ago.
Excuse me, in pairs, or it says that in groups of 3 or 4, the guide?
Three or four, please.
Okay.
Because we have
For
four
text.
transcripts. Exactly. So you need to write in the form of the class the transcript that you're going to analyze with your group.
Mhm. Yeah, we already did it.
Okay, good. The method that we are going to study tonight to analyze data is called grounded theory, and it is the method that is used in that can be used in different types of research. So grounded theory. Basically, the stages that were established by two authors, Strauss and Corbin. So this week, Strauss and Corbin established 3 steps to analyze data following the grounded theory. The first one is open coding. The second one is actual coding. And the third one is selective coding. So this week you are reading about open coding, and that's the exercise that you have to do. And tonight we're going to do a short exercise to practice that. So I'm gonna start by showing you one part of the research that was carried out in 2016. Just give me 1 second. So 2 years ago in the program, the director of the program, Jorge, designed something that is called a learning object with the purpose of helping the students to interact and to carry out a series of stages in order to work on a project for intermediate 1. And he designed the virtual object, taking into account 6 stages that are established by Noonan for task-based learning. So the idea was to design the learning object and to ask students in intermediate 1 to use it, and to ask students at that time to evaluate the learning object. Oh, something is wrong with this. So first I'm gonna show you the learning object, because the transcripts that you have to work with your classmates are the transcripts of the interviews in order to find out the students' evaluations of that learning object. Okay, finally I got it. Okay, this learning object was published in the virtual room at that time. It had on the left a menu and 2 to help students navigate, surf the virtual object. There was a presentation. There was later a list of competences that this material was trying to foster or to promote. So there were some competences regarding cognition, attitude, and more others, pragmatics, etc. After that presentation and competences, the students were informed about the requirements, internet connection, creativity, and participation. Later, the students found 6 stages. The first stage was context. In that stage, the students found a video about vocabulary. This learning object was or asked students to work on a talk show. So first, they presented vocabulary about shows, then some comprehension questions about that video. After that, there was a forum, so the student had to talk about the differences and similarities between North American and Colombian TV shows and how those TV shows influence children's behavior. So the student had to reflect about that, give their opinions, and publish it in the virtual room. That was stage 1. Stage 2 was a control practice. There was a video, a trivia about favorite TV shows, and there was here an exercise for the students to have a short talk. So it says, identify your favorite TV show and find information about it. Prepare a 3-minute presentation to talk about your favorite TV show. Be ready to talk about the information on the WizIQ platform. And remember to include the vocabulary practice during stage 1. So students had to prepare this, and in the virtual encounter, they had to discuss their answers. Okay, stage 3, I'm showing this because what you're gonna read, the transcript, is about students' opinion about this design, the design of this material. So when you find out that the students talk about competences, it's because they are talking about the first part of this presentation, in which students have the list of what they are aimed to achieve with the development of these exercises. Then you will find out that the students talk about the first stage, that is the one that I show you, which is called context, right? Anyway, you will find this information in the virtual room in the folder that is called transcripts. So in that folder, you find this information plus the transcripts. Okay, this third stage was called authentic listening. The students found a pre-listening task, a listening about a conversation between 2 people talking about their childhood TV shows, some listening comprehension questions, and a forum that asks students to think about their favorite childhood cartoon and to talk about it, why they liked it, and the difference with the current programs. In stage 4, there was some exercises regarding grammar. So students had a short video in which they watch how present perfect was used. Then they had some links to practice the present perfect through games. More exercises, more grammar exercises, and that was stage 4. In stage 5, pre-practice, students watch a video again of famous people that were interviewed about things, experiences they have had. So after watching the video, students were asked to answer these questions. Have you ever met a TV star? Have you ever kissed an animal? Some students want to know about your experiences. Click on the image and answer the questions. Students found out some questions. Then they had to prepare a conversation that they had to discuss in the virtual room, in the virtual encounter, about their questions that they could ask their classmates about experiences, so they could practice how to use present perfect to ask questions. After that, the students had to work on this listening exercise and fill in the gaps. This was about how to prepare an interview, type of questions they could ask, how to conduct the interview, other tips. And finally, since this was a learning object to have students work on a project, so that's why there are several tasks, at the end the student had to create their own talk show in groups. And then they had to meet in a virtual encounter, record it, and that was the end of the learning object. So what you will find in the transcripts is that students are going to be asked about the videos, if they liked it or not, if they found them interesting or not, useful, about the games. So the games that I told you were in stage 4, if they found those games useful, etc. So to evaluate all the stages and all the resources used for them to create a talk show. That's what you're going to find in the interview, in the transcript that you're going to analyze with your classmates. So far, you have questions?
How long are the interviews?
They are about 15 pages.
15, what do you say? I'm sorry.
Pages.
Pages. Ah, okay, it's written, it's not the audio.
No, you have the transcript of those transcripts. So I will explain what you have to do with those transcripts. Let's see. I will also want you to see, just for you to know, like the survey that was used for this research. You don't have to analyze the data collected for the survey, but I want you to take a look at it. It had an introduction, and it informed students that they could use a score from 1 to 5 to agree or disagree with some sentences. Students were asked to tell us their age, the gender, how long they had been enrolled in virtual education courses, and then they had some sentences for them to agree or disagree. Those sentences were about the design of the virtual or the learning object, if the content was attractive, it was readable, it was appropriate, the content, if the graphics facilitated comprehension, if there were no grammatical or typing mistakes. Then there were some sentences about usability, if the instructions were comprehensible, if it was easy for them to access to the contents, and if the links work properly. Some sentences about contents again, if the contents were related to the situations that they had to face in reality, if they were challenging, if the activities were up to date, if the amount of the activities was appropriate to help the students develop the competencies established, and aspects related to learning process. So this is to let you know that in order to find out a student's evaluation was necessary to use at least two data collection instruments, the survey and the interview that you will find in the exercise for this week.
Teacher,
Okay.
it's necessary to complete those charts, and also one analysis about the instruments of data
No,
to complete 15 pages?
not for this task. The idea to show you this survey is just to let you know how the survey was designed for the research that I am talking about. But what you are going to do this week with your classmates is to choose one transcript and analyze it as I'm gonna explain now. So for example, this transcript of one survey, of one interview, an interview to a student that was called Gio. So this was the question of the research. So the students, what is the student's evaluation about the learning object? So as I told you, the questions were about all the stages, all the content and design of the learning object that I showed at the beginning. So I would like one of you please help me to read this page that we have here so I can explain later what you have to do.
I can help you if you want.
Okay, Maria, please.
Transcription, ok, interviewer. Te voy a hacer unas preguntas con respecto al proyecto que hicieron. Proyecto 1 que hicieron para intermedio 1. Entonces usaron un objeto de aprendizaje que tú ves en la pantalla. Este objeto está dividido en presentación y en 6 diferentes etapas. En esa presentación, allí en la información sobre las competencias, un listado de competencias que se espera que los estudiantes desarrollen después de terminar las actividades que están allí establecidas en las etapas, y se da una información sobre los requisitos. Con respecto a esta primera parte, que es la presentación, el listado y las competencias y los requisitos, ¿qué opinas? ¿Qué sugerencias tienes? ¿Qué comentarios tienes con respecto a esta primera parte? Go. Primero, pienso que está bien organizada la presentación y de primera vista nosotros identificamos cuáles son las competencias que vamos a trabajar. Entonces allí hablaba, estoy leyendo de la cognitiva, nosotros lo habíamos trabajado en el grupo, habíamos leído esa parte y pues nos pareció interesante que como que tuvieran en cuenta esas competencias, la actitudinal, la de escucha, de habla, la de poder trabajar en grupo. Eso nos ayudó muchísimo, primero pues a socializar, segundo como soltarnos un poquito para poder hablar y realizar las actividades.
Okay, thank you, Maria. So the idea is that in order to use open coding, that is the first stage to analyze data, we are going to find out students' words used to evaluate the competences. So the competences are the first thing that the person, the interviewer, asks the student to evaluate. So the student, Gio, answers that it's organized, that they could identify the competences, that they were interested, that those competences help them to socialize. So the idea when we work with open coding is to identify keywords, in this case adjectives, that help to evaluate, that help the student to evaluate the competences part of the learning object. And on the right, we are going to use the same words or synonyms of the words used by the student to write a code. In this case is, las competencias listadas se presentan de forma organizada y permite su identificación. Las competencias establecidas son interesantes y les ayudan a los estudiantes a socializar y a desarrollar su habilidad para hablar en inglés. So as you see, the information, the code that we have here is not something that was created by the researcher. It's something, it's like a conclusion of the words used by the participant, by the student in this case. Why those words? Because the question is, what is the evaluation of the students regarding the implementation of the learning object? So in order to evaluate, the student use the words like organized, interesting, help to socialize. So far, do you have questions?
So the idea is to identify like the most important words, yes? Like the words that summarize everything that the interview is the person that you're interviewing is saying, yes?
Exactly, that's the idea. That's actual, that's open coding. It's the first stage to analyze data.
Teacher, but the document for doing that one is in another Word presentation. I mean, I understand that we must try to find objectives to evaluate. Yeah, conclusion by participant and what is the evaluation about. But those contests are in another Word format.
Okay, if I understood your question, the idea is that each group chooses one interview. This is an example of the interview of GO, but in the virtual room, in the folder transcripts, you will find the interview to LE, to LG, to JP, and to RC. So you need to choose one because it will be what you will analyze with your group. And the interview is similar to the one that we are reading for this exercise. So the first question will be about the competences of the learning object. And then the interviewer will ask for the first stage. That was the context of the learning object. It's a semi-structured, this is a semi-structured interview because although the interviewer wanted to ask about all the stages, the interviewer follows the interviewee's conversation when the person answers about videos, so or focuses his answer to one specific part of the design. The interviewer asks more questions about that specific part. So
I have a question.
Maria, yes.
Sorry. On the right under codes, the LE, LG, JP, RC, what were those?
No, these are the transcripts that you will find in the virtual.
Ah, okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, so there are
Yes.
4 transcripts and you choose only one. This is an example of a transcript and this is an example of what you have to do. You need to choose a color for each topic. In this case, I chose yellow for the topic of competences and the interviewee's opinion about those competences. Later, the person is asked about the first step or stage of the learning object, and I chose the color green to identify those opinions of the student about the first stage. So let's read this. Who wants to help me to read this, please?
Okay, me.
Ready.
Bueno, ahora te voy a mostrar la primera etapa que se llama contexto. Entonces, esta primera etapa empieza con un video acerca del vocabulario relacionado con shows de televisión. Y hay una serie de preguntas de comprensión del video y un foro en el que se le pide a los estudiantes identificar las diferencias y las similitudes entre los shows colombianos y norteamericanos. La tarea consiste en mencionar cómo los shows influyen en el comportamiento de los niños. Con respecto a esta tarea, ¿qué sugerencia tienes? ¿Qué opinión tienes? Go. En esa primera etapa del video era muy claro porque nos presentaban como un top show, donde nosotros veíamos como la parte favorita de los programas de televisión de una chica que era la que estaba explicando. Interviewer. Ah, no. Ese video que tú estás recordando es de otra etapa. Ese que tú ves en la pantalla es la presentación de vocabulario que está relacionado con shows. Entonces, solo el listado de vocabulario y la explicación. Go. Sí. Era un video donde la chica estaba explicando las clases de shows, ¿cierto? Sí, ya me acordé, que está en un tablero. Ese vocabulario nos ayudó muchísimo porque fue de primera mano que nos lo dieron. Entonces, cuando nos tocó hacer el show, ya teníamos como palabras porque ya lo habíamos visto en el video y entonces, por ejemplo, ella explicaba lo de las clases de shows. Hablaba sobre el tiempo que se tomaban. Esa parte nos gustó mucho en el momento en el que nos tocó contestar las preguntas del cuestionario, donde hablaba sobre cómo se hacían los diferentes programas, cuánto tiempo duraban, cómo se dividía el programa. Pues eso fue interesante. Fue una etapa para nosotros o para mí muy nuevo conocer esto de la televisión y pudimos contestar el cuestionario como un poquito más fácil con ese video. El video de la primera etapa presenta vocabulario que los estudiantes requieren para responder a ejercicios posteriores. El video de la primera etapa presenta vocabulario nuevo. La presentación del vocabulario es novedosa y comprensible. El vocabulario que utilizó la chica era entendible para nosotros y la forma en que nos presenta el video también. Fue novedoso porque estaba muy claro todo y muy entendible y eso me gustó muchísimo. Interviewer. ¿Y qué opinas del foro?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Let's see this part. So what you will find in the virtual room is a similar transcript without colors and without information in this second column, because that is the code that you need to find. I mean, a code in this case is like the keywords or the summary of the student's opinion or evaluation on the aspects that is being asked by the interviewer. So in this second part that Freddie read, the interviewer asked about the first stage. The student remembered that the first stage had a video, and she explained, the student explained that the video helped her or helped the group because at the end of the final task was to create a talk show. So in the video, the students found vocabulary that was helpful for them to create at the end the talk show. So she mentioned also the word interesting and new. And that's what the researcher uses here on the right to create the code. Vocabulario que los estudiantes requieren para responder ejercicios posteriores. Look at it that in this case, the words are not exactly the same that the student uses. That is the summary of what the student mentioned. The video has words, vocabulary that help them to answer later exercises. The videos present new vocabulary and the presentation of that new vocabulary was new and comprehensive. So here she uses the word new, interesting, and she used the word easy. So it was comprehensible for her, entendible, novedoso. Okay, questions so far?
When we do our work, do we have to like do it like you're doing there, like in colors, in different colors for each different code, or for each time that the speaker say something, or colors don't matter, or there's a
Yes,
meaning behind the colors?
colors will help for the stage 2 and 3 of analyzing data. This is a stage 1. And next week, we will study stage 2 and 3. So stage 1 is called open coding. Stage 2 is called actual coding, and stage 3 is called selective coding. So for the first stage, it will be very helpful if you use colors, so it will be easier for you to do a stage 2 and 3 next week.
Okay, understand.
Good. So this is the last part of this example. So
sorry, I have a question, teacher.
yes.
For next week, are we gonna use the same interview, or are we gonna do? Because you mentioned 2 stages, and we're gonna work on stage 1. Like for next week, are we working on the same document?
Yes, because since the question of the research is to find out the students' evaluation of the material of the learning object. Each group, each one of you, each one of your groups is going to analyze the evaluation of only one student. So next week, we will have all the evaluations, the evaluations of the 4 students in order to group them. So the idea is to group the data until we have until we study the commonalities that students have regarding the evaluation of that material.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And we do it in Spanish, just as you have it there.
Yes, what you have in the, yes, this survey was carried out in Spanish because the idea was to get as much information as possible from the students. And since the participants' native language was Spanish, the idea was to have them talk as much as possible using their mother language. And because of the level they had at the moment, they used the material.
Okay, so in this week's task, I already read. I understand. We only have to do this that you did. Like each question, take it and take out the code and put it in the column, and that's the complete task. Yes, along with reading for the paper. Yes.
That is the first part. The second part is to put the codes in a matrix that I'm gonna show you in a minute.
Okay.
But it's just to copy and paste in a matrix.
Okay.
Okay, who wants to help me to read the information that is on the screen?
If you want, I can do it.
Please.
¿Y qué opinas del foro? Geo, bueno, el foro fue muy interesante. Tocaron los puntos clave de los programas de los shows que hay en Norteamérica y los que hay en Colombia y la influencia que hay en nuestros chicos. Entonces hablamos mucho de los programas que son muy violentos y hoy en día en los colegios uno ve a los chicos en el descanso jugando sus juegos. Se pegan patadas, se empujan, entonces vemos que de pronto en la explicación de un adulto el niño imita lo que ve en la televisión agrediendo a sus compañeros. Entonces también fue novedoso porque no solo la parte del vocabulario nos enfocaba hacia el idioma, sino que también nos hacía como ver la realidad de lo que hoy en día es la televisión frente a nuestros estudiantes. El foro propuesto en la primera etapa fue interesante porque no solo se enfocó en la práctica del vocabulario, también promovió el análisis de la realidad y permitió discutir aspectos claves de shows colombianos y norteamericanos y su influencia en los televidentes.
Okay, thank you, Andres. So here, the color fuchsia for the topic of photo, the words, the keywords interesting, interesting because talked about real shows, was something new, was close to reality. So what we have in the code is the summary using those words. El foro propuesto en la primera etapa fue interesante porque no solo se enfocó en la práctica de vocabulario, también promovió el análisis de la realidad, permitió discutir aspectos claves de shows colombianos, norteamericanos y su influencia en los televidentes. It's a summary, using some of the words that the interviewee mentioned. Okay, so after you work on that
Sorry, I also have a question. So it's a summary, but also you are focusing on what you're asking. Yes, I mean you define the code based on what you're asking, or try to be as objective as possible. Or
okay. Here on the right, we need to identify the topic, which is photo. That is what the student is evaluating. So, and we need to be, or you have to be very objective because you're gonna summarize what the person mentioned using some of the words the person mentioned. You're not going to write here something new. It's a summary, it's a summary of what the person mentioned.
Yeah.
On the right, you're not gonna on this column, you're not gonna write your opinion. You're going to write the interviewee's opinion.
Yeah, I understand, but what I'm asking is, for example, he says there, entonces hablamos mucho de los programas que son muy violentos. Hoy en día en los colegios uno ve, they talk about that. And you don't put it here. It's because the question is specifically about the forum. Yes, so those things about the schools and that the kids are violent or whatnot is not the most important thing.
Well,
yes?
the thing is that the idea of the research is to find out if the activities and the material used in the virtual object was useful, was good for the students. The idea of having of what the interviewee mentions about children hitting each other, fighting at school is kind of included in this word, realidad. Se promovió el análisis de la realidad. But you could use other word. I mean, the idea is to try to summarize that.
I understand. Thanks.
Okay. So, the last part of the exercise is to put that in a matrix. No, this is not. Do you see? Do you see my screen?
No.
No, teacher.
No, teacher.
Now we can see.
Yes.
Okay. No, this is the second task. I'm sorry. This is the second stage of the data analysis. So what you will do next week is to put the codes in this matrix and the explanation. And then, well, next week I will let you know what you have to do for this second part of the analysis. So yeah, so the task that you have to do is to choose from the virtual room one transcript and
identify the codes.
Identify the codes using colors and publish it in the virtual room. Right? So as I told you, the file is about 15 pages long. So the questions will be about the forums, the videos, the competences, the games included, the design, the photos that were included in the virtual object, etc. So that's why in the virtual object you will find the learning object that I show you. You will find it in the virtual object.
Okay.
Right? And what you have is also a reading in Spanish about open coding, so you understand a little bit more what this stage is about, why researchers do open coding to analyze data. Questions?
No, it's clear.
So, teacher, are these the last two assignments for this paper, or after next week, do we have something else?
No, that's the last exercise for the course. I thought I changed it. Last week I told you that it was to read about your topic of interest, but I changed it because I thought it was better to split this data analysis topic into 2 sessions because of the complexity of analyzing data.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you.
Any other question?
No, just clear.
Okay, so that's all what I wanted to share with you tonight. Maybe you can profit from some minutes that are left to work with your classmates on this task. And email me if you have questions. So the idea is to publish this analysis by Sunday and to meet again next Tuesday to explain to you stage 2 and 3 of the analysis.
Great.
Good. Okay, so thanks a lot for joining the encounter tonight and see you next Tuesday.
Okay, teacher.
Thank you,
Right,
teacher.
teacher.
Okay, thank you
very much. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Very interesting.
Have
Thank
a nice
you.
night, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.